It is relatively normal for the regular field Medicare agent to feel a bit of disdain for some of the larger publicly traded call center organizations in our industry. And over the years, it's been pretty normal to actually experience situations where it seems like, maybe business might not always have been done ethically, maybe, deceptive marketing practices and et cetera, flipping clients to plans that don't suit them when you had them on the proper plan to start with, right? They all of a sudden have a plan that fits their needs, and then all of a sudden they have a plan that doesn't cover their doctor. We've all experienced these types of things from some of the larger, as I mentioned, publicly traded call center organizations in our space. But in this video, I want to dive into a little bit of a case study in terms of these organizations and what these tactics actually have really developed for them in terms of results and what you as an agency owner can actually learn from it, okay? So I'm going to actually flash some stock prices, some screenshots across the screen, so that way we can actually look at the specifics of these call center organizations and kind of see how they're doing versus how they were doing when they IPO'd as a stock several years ago. The first one we're going to be looking at is SelectQuote, okay? So their stock IPO'd in May 21st of 2020, and it IPO'd at $26.20 per share on the stock market, okay? Reached a high April 9th, 2021 of $31.48 per share, okay? So this stock IPO'd around $26. It got to a high of about $31.50, give or take. Now, what does it look like today? Okay, this IPO'd in 2020 during the pandemic, essentially, during the pandemic year. It reached a high in 2021. What does it look like today at the time of recording this video at 2024? Well, since its IPO, it is down over 87%, down to $3.25 per share. Ouch. Let's look at another giant call center titan, okay? eHealth, okay? eHealth IPO'd probably a little bit earlier than SelectQuote did, but essentially back in March of 27th in 2020, it reached its high of $134.61 per share, okay? I remember a buddy of mine even looking at potentially buying some of these shares, a few buddies of mine actually in the insurance world, because eHealth seemed to be everywhere, right? Online advertisements, their website was incredibly huge in terms of its ranking nationally for Medicare keywords. They were sending mailers. They were partnering with large pharmacies like Costco, if I remember correctly. They seemed to be everywhere. Now, looking at their stock today, over the past 5 years, their stock is down over 95% to $3.79 a share. Wow. Look at another, shall we? GoHealth. Health might have been the most notorious of all of these organizations in terms of the advertising maybe being a little bit suspect, maybe practices being a little bit suspect. They IPO'd in July of 2020. They IPO'd at $375 per share. Since then, their stock is down over 97%, and it sits at the time of recording this video at $7.62 a share. Why am I showing you all this, right? What is the point of all this? The point is that there is a lesson to be learned in the demise of a lot of these large call center organizations. Now, they are making adjustments. They're trying to, kind of come out of this kind of dead space they've really kind of dug themselves into. And truth be told, if you looked at these stock prices a year ago, they were probably even lower than they are today, right? Some of them were $1 a share, less than $1 a share. They were in danger of essentially becoming a penny stock, right? After being really looked at as promising IPOs at the time of them actually entering the stock market. But there is a lesson to be learned in terms of their demise, right? Why did their stock prices, all of them, plummet? More than 80%, more than 90%, in some cases more than 100%, right? Why did this happen? I've got one key reason for you, and there's several I could throw at you, but if I had to pick one, it would be this: transactional business. If you have dealt with any of these organizations before, or if you know anybody, a client maybe that got their plan flipped by these organizations, their tactics were extremely transactional, right? Their model is essentially they're set up as national call centers. These call centers are bringing in reps quickly. From everything I've heard from anybody I've ever known that's worked at these organizations, the training is not really there. Sometimes they've felt like people that I've talked to that have worked at these types of organizations, they have felt like maybe they were asked to do some things that might not always be in the best interest of the client, might not always be ethical. Of course, that's essentially, speculatism, more than anything else, because it's not public knowledge or anything like that. But if you look at kind of their business model, their goal was to bring in clientele and flip their policies as early and as often as possible in as much volume as possible, with no interest of any kind in any long-term customer service, no specific representative being assigned to that member, to that beneficiary. And also, anytime you're trying to sell Medicare Advantage plans nationwide in all 50 states, it is very, very difficult, especially for the people that were answering the phone that maybe just got their license in the last 30 to 60 days in some cases with these big call centers, to really be able to decipher what plan is going to be strong for what reasons in a particular market when they're getting calls from all 50 states. I'll give an example. There's plans that in our home market in Utah are not extremely competitive, but in other parts of the country within big national carriers, they're very competitive and they go by the same name. I know for a fact that a lot of these call center representatives, they're getting calls from areas where these plans are competitive. They're doing the plan. It's a no-brainer. It's a slam dunk. And then they'll take a call from our area and they'll just look at the plan and, quickly they're seeing this market. They're seeing these plans for the very first time on this phone call. And they will essentially at that point have to take, just the assumption, if you will, because they don't know that market very well, that plan is actually really good. And they just don't have the time to really process it. And they end up putting the client on a plan that probably is one of the least competitive plans in said market, right? So it's selecting, oftentimes, more often than not, from situations I've personally seen, plans being selected that might not best fit the needs of the client, that any field agent can come in and essentially spot from 10 miles away. It's also no customer service, no need in terms of, it being any more than just a transaction, right? They came into this business looking at it from the standpoint of, we are going to look at the lifetime values of Medicare beneficiaries. What is our normal lifetime value of Medicare beneficiaries? 5 years, 6 years, whatever the case might be. And that's how big call centers process these things. I'm not saying these metrics are bad or they're not something that you should be considering in your own business, but they don't look at first-year commission like you may. They look at lifetime value of commission. So what I mean by that is if your average commission is, say, $300 a year on a client, and that's your average, they're looking at a 5-year lifetime value. So they're estimating that the company brought in $1,500 of revenue. So that's how they're looking at these types of things. They're looking at their cost per acquisition and their lifetime value. And as long as the lifetime value is significantly more than the cost per acquisition, even if it's $500, $600, $700 per client, they are satisfied with that. The biggest metric that I believe as an industry expert, as somebody that's been in this industry my entire adult life, is that they underestimated the value of personal relationship business when it comes to Medicare beneficiaries. 5-6 years might be a good lifetime value and an accurate lifetime value for Medicare beneficiary, but if you're doing business only transactionally, it can be maybe half of that. Maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years. And what these organizations were seeing was their retention rates were horrific, right? You and I know as Medicare beneficiaries, even if you do the bare minimum in terms of service work, you should be able to retain 80 to 85% of your clients. My organization is exceptional and phenomenal with our service work for our clients. It's a big point of pride for us. We keep about 95% of our beneficiaries year in and year out and our clients on the books. These organizations, if you look at their actual and there's multiple other call centers. I just picked a couple that you might know the names of. But a lot of these types of organizations, they're looking at 40, 50, 60% retention rates, and they're losing 40, 50, 60% of their clientele and their new business that they're bringing in. You can't grow that way. You can't scale that way. If you are losing just as many new clients as you're bringing in. You're on a hamster wheel. You're not going anywhere, and you're running really hard to go nowhere very fast. And that's what these organizations found themselves in the situation of. Transactional selling, also how that person ends up on the plan, if it's done maybe in a little bit of a shady way, it might not always be the conducive of them actually staying on that plan long term. There's absolutely zero loyalty from that client to that organization. And these organizations found that out the hard way. And I believe it creates a interesting opportunity for a lesson for all of you that want to build Medicare agencies and Medicare practices. Relationship selling matters. Transactional selling doesn't work. And even at large scale with publicly traded companies where they're unlimited, where they have unlimited private equity and investors and things like that are backed, it still cannot overcome the impact of clients not wanting to stay with you if it's all based on a transaction. Hope you found this video helpful. If you did and you want to see more like it, please do me a favor, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It's going to help so many more Medicare agents just like you who need to hear this information, who can find the video easier, frankly, thanks to your contribution. Comment your thoughts down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Is there any points you think I missed when it comes to these call center organizations? I'd love to have a dialogue with you. Make sure to subscribe. We put out weekly videos to help you grow your business. Without further ado, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Here's to your success and your abundance. Thanks, everybody.